A couple of words, good morning. A couple of words about the postings on Blackboard. There are a lot of links, semantics related links, and this doesn't mean that you have to kind of like know everything in those links, but I do recommend that you watch all of them. Because they elaborate, they expand on the readings of the book, and they support the readings of the book. Because we can only have this 150 minutes here together, so then Monday and Friday, if you spend that class time viewing those videos, you will get an idea of what a hugely versatile field semantics is and what kinds of questions need to be asked about meaning when we study, or can be asked about meaning when we study semantics. So there are a lot of links, but not all of them are long at all. Most of them are really short, so it shouldn't take that much time to view through them. Just set aside like the class time on Friday, and that'll be helpful. Okay, so today's topic is semantics, and semantics tries to answer the question, what is meaning? So far what we've been doing in this class has been really very mechanical. We started from phonetics, which is the description. We talked about the description, classification of speech sounds. And you learned all these places of articulation, manners of articulation, the voicing, that those are the things that go into the description of consonants. And then in the vowel system, we talked about front and back and high and low and rounded and unrounded and tense and lax. So that was phonetics. And of course, a phone, a sound, doesn't have any meaning. It doesn't have any meaning. When we talk about phonemes, then when we move on from phonetics to talk about phonology, phonemes don't have meaning either. They are sound units that we use in order to put them together and build meanings out of the phonemes, but a phoneme per se does not have any meaning. A phoneme is important in language because changing one phoneme to another, as we learned when we looked at minimal pairs, has the power of changing the meaning of the word from mate to pate to date to gate to rate to late, and so on and so forth. So all those beginning sounds, phones are also phonemes in English because they have the power of changing the meaning. But a phone and a phoneme, they don't, in themselves, they do not have meaning at all. Okay, then we moved on to talk about morphology. And now morpheme is a meaning unit. And it is just a meaning unit that is different from a syllable, different from a word, and it is something that we use. It is a building block of language that we use in order to build words, right? And morphemes do have meaning. But we didn't go beyond a morpheme yet. So then we went on to talk about sentences, and we focused on the structure of the sentences, phrases and sentences. And what is that area of linguistics, that sub-area? So we covered phonetics, phonology, morphology, syntax, yes. And syntax is the study of the structure of phrases and sentences. And we touched a little bit about meaning there because the structure of the sentence can sometimes, and typically, has a lot to do with the meaning. And we talked a little bit about ambiguity and how we can understand ambiguous structures. Even though the sentence is identical, we have the sentence, she shot the man with a rifle. We talked about that a week ago. And here we have two meanings. We have an ambiguous sentence, and the two meanings can be disambiguated by the fact that we can understand the two different structures. She had a rifle or the man had a rifle. And that has to do with the constituent structure of both of those two sentences, which are identical on the surface, but they have deep structure differences in meaning. So we have covered, basically we have covered 4 areas, and everything has been pretty much straightforward and facts, right? It's either this or that. So when we talk about phones, they are either fricatives or stops. When we talk about phonemes, they are either distinctive. Well, phonemes are distinctive sounds in a language anyway. But when we talked about morphemes, for instance, that's an either or thing. Going back to phonemes. Phonemes are either phonemes in a language or not phonemes in a language if they are just variants of another phoneme. So something is either a phoneme or not. So that's also an either or thing. In morphology, it's either or things. Something is a derivational morpheme or an inflectional morpheme. Something is free or bound. Well, there we had a little bit of a gray area in the middle, but very little actually. So then we moved on to syntax, and everything is again very straightforward. Something is, a word is either a noun or a verb or an adjective or an adverb or one of the function category elements, parts of speech. So it's been very, very clear in a sense. Now we are moving to semantics, and semantics is going to introduce a lot of fuzziness, because we're still, semanticists are linguists who have expertise, who have focused on the study of semantics, the study of meaning, and they are still working. There are a lot of theories. There have been a lot of attempts to explain how we understand language and what the meaning of language is. So semantics is the study of the meaning of words and phrases and sentences. And if we just think about the fact that we can understand each other, we can communicate because we understand each other. We understand most of the words that people say. We understand what they are attempting to say. We sometimes understand that they're trying to say something else that they mean. But we are able to communicate, and that is, in a way, it's a little miracle. Because how did we get to this point that we understand the meanings of words, for instance? And you learned that when you were little, and you learned the meanings of words, you learned to communicate, and you started, most kids start by saying a one-word sentence at a time. So an entire utterance consists of one word. But they have to learn these words. And sometimes, if you know little kids who are 2 or 3 years old, they sometimes use the meanings of words a little bit differently from how adults use those words. And of course, a little kid doesn't know as many words as you do. Nobody knows all the words in English, all the meanings of all the words. But we talked when we were at the borderline between morphology and syntax. We talked about the fact that we can, even if we don't understand the meaning of the word, we can still get a gist of what the sentence might mean, the entire sentence, because we can categorize the meaning of a word unknown to us according to the part of speech. Our brains do that little online calculation really quickly. So semantics is now trying to explain how we understand the meanings of words, the meanings of phrases, and the meanings of sentences. And there's still a lot of work to be done in this area, but it's an extremely interesting area. So when we talk about meanings, let me go back to the little child who is acquiring vocabulary, acquiring new words. Of course, they learn it from the context, and they learn it from how the word is used in a context. And sometimes it takes a little while for them to get the whole meaning of the word, the accurate meaning from the point of view of the adult language. So they may, at one point, they may call all four-legged animals dog. If they have a dog at the house, all four-legged animals would be dogs, because they don't have the names for sheep and goats and so on. So it's an expansion of meaning that a lot of kids use, but they very quickly learn that that's a goat and this is a sheep, and I shouldn't be calling them dogs, right? And they're very quick to pick up that, and of course the context helps. They sometimes get feedback. No, sweetie, it's not a dog, it's a sheep. So they work through this, but it's an amazing task when you think about it, what you all went through in order to be competent speakers of English, because competence expands to the area of semantics as well. It's competence in all these sub-areas of linguistics, and the competence in semantics means that you know the meanings of words, you know the meanings of sentences. That's even a bigger miracle than knowing the meanings of words. So that's the question that semanticists try to answer. What is meaning? How do we go about understanding how we understand words? So first of all, meaning, it involves three different kinds of relationships. So the first relationship of these three relationships that meaning involves is the relationship between language and the minds of the speakers. When I say, could you pick up your books, if I say that to you, you all would probably, reach out and pick up language files from your backpack. And understanding what a book is, it means that we all have a similar kind of a mental image in our minds about the word book. And in this context, of course, the context then adds to the meaning, but we'll talk more about the context and how that alters meaning when we move on to pragmatics, the next area coming up. So in our minds, when we think about how we understand a word, for instance, everybody has some kind of a mental image. If you think about the word chair, okay, so everyone has some kind of an image of a chair, and if we were able to take a photo of the mental image, of your mental image of the word chair, we would have 7 different pictures here, so mine included. So those pictures are different, and then yet, how are we able to understand what a chair is? Like, for instance, you are sitting on a chair, there's another chair, there's at the corner, there's another chair, and they are all very different looking. They have a certain number of features that are shared, and that's what makes us able to understand the meanings of words. So that's one of the important relationships. Also, language is used to refer to things outside the language. So another second relationship is the relationship between language and the world. There is a world that we talk about, right? And there needs to be a relationship, some kind of a mapping between the words, our language, and what we are referring to. Like if I say, it's raining outside, so it involves a world where it's raining, and then we can talk about it. And there's a connection between what we say about the world and the actual reality out there. And then the third relationship is about language and its practical uses. We need to take into consideration how we use words, and the meanings of words may change over years and over decades and especially over centuries. So we need to figure into our understanding of meaning how those words are used. Just a really quick, obvious and understandable example would be the word gay, for instance. Gay is used quite differently today than it was used decades ago. In the 1940s still, or if you go even earlier, 1920s, gay meant what?
Happy.
Yes, happy. And it has changed its meaning radically, and that's why we don't use the word gay when we mean happy today. Otherwise, we would be misunderstood, right? So the practical use of the word today is different from what it was decades ago. So these are the three relationships that we need to kind of like take into consideration when we talk about meaning, when we try to understand what meaning is. So linguists, semanticists, they have taken very many different approaches. We'll talk about lexical semantics first. Lexical semantics meaning the meaning of words, individual words. So we'll start from that, and there have been a lot of attempts to use meanings, use the word in relation to another word in order to try to explain its meaning. And we'll be going over several different attempts that people have used in order to try to figure out how we understand the meanings of words. So this area is lexical semantics. And it looks only at the meanings of individual words. So if you take the word dog, you can try to define the word dog in relation to another word. So another word would be like poodle. So you look at try to define the meaning of poodle in relation to the meaning of dog, and the meaning of dog in relation to the meaning of poodle. And of course that helps us to understand a little bit of the meaning of both. So this kind of an approach, this relationship between dog and poodle is called a hyponymic relationship, and it looks at two words where one is included, one's meaning is included in the other. So poodle is a hyponym of dog. This is a hyponym. It's an example. It's an undername, literally hyponym. And then dog is the hypernym of the poodle. It's the over category. So hyper, the Greek prefix is here. Hyper is like over and hypo is under. So the poodle is a kind of a dog. Okay? And this relationship is a hyponymic relationship. Then we have also synonyms, and that's probably something that you learned already in elementary school. Synonymy, let's write the whole word there. So synonymy. If you think of words like sofa, you can try to define the meaning of the sofa in terms of its relationship of its synonym, which would be couch, for instance. So sofa and couch are synonyms, right? And that relationship helps to understand the meaning of both, right? So sofa is a kind of sofa is a couch, and couch is a sofa, right? And of course, this is what dictionaries try to do. They give you synonyms, sometimes circumlocutions, and so on. But synonyms are very often used in dictionaries to try to define the meaning of a word, and that's a good way to go. However, are sofa and couch truly identical in your minds? If we go back to like your mental images of a sofa and a couch. So we could say that their dictionary meanings, the dictionary meaning is the denotation. It's a seat meant for more than one person, more than two people actually usually, and it's a piece of furniture meant for sitting. So that would be the denotation, the dictionary definition of the sofa, and also of couch. But do you have like a tiny little connotational difference? Connotation is those added meanings that are not part of the dictionary meaning of the word, dictionary definition of the word, but we all get some kind of a mental picture of a word. So are your mental pictures for sofa and couch identical? Totally identical. Yeah, no, there's a little bit of a difference, right? And so if I give you an example of a piece of furniture meant for sitting and for more than one or two people, which is kept in the parlor, and it is an antique piece of furniture, and it's this velvet covered, red velvet covered piece of furniture with rosewood little legs, curly legs, and trimmings around it, and it's in the parlor, not in the den. So is that a sofa or a couch?
I would say a sofa.
You would say sofa. Would everybody else agree? It's a little bit more a sofa-like of a thing if it's like fancy. And of course there's not a big difference there. In our house we have a sofa, and it is in what we pompously call a parlor, and then there's a the cats cannot go there. They cannot sleep on the sofa, but they can sleep on the couch, which is in the den or living room. And we can spill Coke on the couch, and it's no such big deal as if the Coke were to be spilled on the sofa. So there's a tiny little stylistic difference there, not a big one, but a tiny little one. And that's kind of like pointing out that when we try to define a word in terms of its synonym, those synonyms, there are very few full synonyms in a language. Language tries to avoid doing, it tries to be very economical. Why have two words meaning exactly the same thing? So we add tiny stylistic differences to the meanings of the words. So we have couch potatoes, for instance, but we do not have sofa potatoes. So sofa and couch are not totally interchangeable. Another example would be two verbs. It would be stop and cease. Of course, these are synonyms as well. Their dictionary definitions are the same. But if you are walking on campus and somebody goes by and snatches your backpack, would you call cease or stop?
Stop.
Probably stop, yes, because we have words that are not completely interchangeable. They have different origins. Cease comes from French. Stop is a native word. So you see that we will be looking at a lot of these different ways of trying to understand how meaning is composed, and we're looking at these different ways, and we get a little further, but we don't get very far just by looking at, for instance, hyponyms, hyponymic relations, and synonymic relations. So we have hyponyms, we have synonyms, and then we have homonyms. So homonymy is another attempt to look at the meanings of words in relation to another. And an example often used is a word bank, or the word bore. So the word bank has actually at least two meanings. It has the meaning of a river bank, right? And it has the meaning of the financial institution where we keep our money. And then, of course, bore has different meanings as well. Bore can mean, like, what you do with a tool, which is also called a bore. You bore a hole into a piece of wood, or it can be what some professors do when they are lecturing. They can bore their students. So different meanings. This is homonymy. These are bank, the financial institution, and bank, the river bank. Those are homonyms. And bore, the verb used as when you bore holes in wood, and when you are tedious, those would be also homonyms. So a homonym is a word that looks identical to another word. And how do we disambiguate this? If somebody says to you in a town, let's meet at the bank, how would you know that if there's a river at that town? How do you know it's not the river bank, it's the financial institution, or vice versa?
Because the word used in the sentence.
Yeah, it's probably the context of what disambiguates that. So we very often manage very well, even though the language has some homonyms. Now, homonymy is related to homophony. And this is the case where a word is pronounced in the same way, but the writing system, the spelling is different. So the writing will disambiguate these words also in addition to the context, of course, as well. So we have night and night, flower and flower. They are just like bank, first meaning, and bank, second meaning, and bore, first meaning, and bore, second meaning, except when you see those in writing, you know that, oh, this is a different word. I remember there's I think it's Moody Blues, I'm dating myself. Moody Blues has this song, Nights in White Satin. And I never saw that title of the song written, but I kept hearing it played on the radio. And I'm dating myself again. Nobody listens to the radio anymore. But night and night, I couldn't figure out, is it a knight like a knight in a shining armor, or is it night, the opposite of day? And it is this one in that particular case. But sometimes, like creative writers, they can use homophony and homonymy in order to kind of play with people's minds to create both meanings, like the meaning, the fact that for some people knights in white satin, if it evokes also the knight in the shining armor, it doesn't hurt. It's kind of like intriguing. So creative writers are good about doing the playing with those homophonic connotations, and they may add another layer of meaning in a poem. Flower and flower, the same thing. The context typically disambiguates those words. So in the case of synonymy, what we have is two forms, two different words. Two forms, but one meaning. Two words that look different, but they mean basically the same. In the case of homonymy, we have two meanings and same form. So in the case of homonyms, the form is the same even when we write it down. In the case of homophones, we have the same phonological form, but not the same orthographic form. By the way, of course, night, it didn't used to be pronounced as night. In Middle English, it was still pronounced as knicht. And Old English is the same thing, knicht. So the k was pronounced, and so they wouldn't have been homophones then. Okay, moving on to another way of trying to approach the meaning of a word, describe the meaning of the word in the relation of another word, and that would be antonymy. So what are antonyms?
Opposite.
They're opposites, yes. So we have different kinds of antonyms, and by the way, on Blackboard, I've written these down as notes, so you can review those as well. So we have. Let's look at two words. when we try to define a word in terms of its opposite, we're looking at pairs like, for instance, single and married. So what does it mean that a person is single? It means that the person is not married. What does it mean that a person is not married? It means that he or she is not single, right? So we could call these antonyms. And in the case of single and married, we have a case of contradictory or complementary pairs. Contradictory or complementary pairs. That's one subcategory of antonymy, okay? Because they're contradictory because you cannot be single at the same time as you are married, even though there are some people who pretend that they can do that. But they shouldn't, right? And you can't be married at the same time as you are single. So when a person gets married, it's sort of like, you move from one legal category to another, and paperwork is needed and so on. So they are contradictory. Contradictory means that you cannot be both at the same time. So if we have all the single people here, if we we can actually try to depict this with a Venn diagram. So you're familiar with these from philosophy. So we have all the single people of the world in this category, and then we have all the married people here in the other category, in the category B. These cannot overlap, these circles in the Venn diagram, they cannot overlap, okay? So everyone is either single or everyone is married. Divorced people would go to which category? Single. And widowed people would be
Single.
Illegally. I'm not going to say anything about that. Would it be legally single, or it's a different category? Maybe we need to have another Venn diagram here for widowed people. But anyway, you get the point. What contradictory means that you can't be the same, you can't be both at the same time. And complementary, which is another way of referring to this kind of antonymy, these kinds of opposites, means that when we take all the single people and put them into category A, and all the married people and put them into category B, that covers all the people, basically. No, already we have the problem what to do with widowed people. Divorced people, single, sure, yes. But widowed, then it's kind of like, oh, you didn't get a divorce, so you're basically still married, but you're without your spouse. So it's it provides, it brings a problem already. And this is the whole point of going through these different ways of trying to define the meaning of a word in relation to another word. They go a little bit of a way to explain how words meanings allow us to, knowing words meanings allow us to communicate, but it doesn't go all the way. So single and married. Let's take another example, like complete and incomplete. So these are also antonyms, and they are contradictory and or complementary pairs, because something cannot be complete at the same time as it's incomplete. So if we say, oh, my homework is almost done, it's still in the incomplete category if it's almost done and not fully done. So that's the first kind of antonymy, relatively simple to understand. But in terms of the number of words that we have to understand in a language, it covers, this relationship covers only very few. I remember when my daughter was, I think she was in 2nd grade, and she came home and she said, "Oh, I learned about synonyms and homonyms," and she called them synonyms. But anyway, she was just like intrigued about this idea that you can find opposites, the antonyms of words. And she was trying to figure out, oh, shirt is an opposite of pants. I'm like, not really, they're not opposites, they're both pieces of clothing. But she was trying to impose this notion to more words than was possible. Okay, no, I'm not wanting to erase this because we are going to look at the next kind of antonym, kinds of antonyms. So if we have two words, hot and cold, we're trying to define hot as not cold and cold as not hot. But you already see a problem with this kind of antonymic pair. Yes, they are opposites, they are antonyms, but this is a different kind of antonymy than single versus married. And these are called scalar antonyms. Because we can do this with the Venn diagram also. So we've got set A, which refers to things that are hot, and another set B, which has all the things that are cold, okay? So it's not that we can take everything and put it into the category A, or to category B, which is cold. So the day today is a cold day in Huntsville, Texas, right? We would put it in this category. We would like to put it in there. But coming from where I come from, which is Finland, it is not really a cold day. It hasn't seen a cold day yet. So it's relative. And this is a kind of antonymy which is called scalar antonymy. There is a scale between things in the hot category and the cold category. So there's a scale in between. And of course, language tries to deal with scalar antonyms by adding words into the in-between category. So we have all kinds of different adjectives that refer to things that are between hot and cold. Can you give me some examples?
Like warm?
Warm, yeah, warm would go somewhere there. What about others?
Fresh or cool.
Yeah. So we have a lot of words that we can put in here. Warm, lukewarm, tepid, cool is no kind of cold. So we can add those words in there. And this relationship between words like hot versus cold is a contrary. It's not a contradictory relation, but it's a contrary relationship. So at the other ends, they don't contradict necessarily each other because we have this scale in between and everything's relative. Then the next kind of antonymy after scalar antonyms, we've looked at contradictory or complementary pairs and scalar antonyms. Then we have relational opposites or converses. And these are words like over and under. And we can say, if you want to say, define where, like for instance, this piece of chalk is, it's over the desk, but under the ceiling. So, and it stays in the same place, but we refer to it either in relation to the desk or in relation to the ceiling. And this is a converse relationship, or relational. These are relational opposites. Same thing with doctor and patient, for instance. It's defined in terms of the relationship. Like if a dentist needs to go, if a dentist has a patient, the patient is called the patient and the dentist is called the doctor. But if the patient happens to be the dentist's psychiatrist and the dentist goes to see his psychiatrist, then the dentist becomes the patient and the patient became the doctor. So that would be relational opposites. So you have to take the relation, which is context dependent, into consideration. Then we have reverses, another kind of way of antonyms, another subcategory for antonyms. Reverses would be right versus left, or inside versus outside, or ascent or descent, tie the shoes or untie the shoes. So these would be reverses. So we can see that antonyms, it's they are opposites, but there are different kinds of antonyms, and defining a word's meaning in terms of its antonyms, whatever kind that is, gets us again a little way towards understanding meaning, but not very far. Okay, so I have. There's much more to be said about semantics, and you've got Friday and tomorrow and today to go over some of those files, but especially I do recommend you read the notes where I have kind of like made a compilation of what a Friday's lecture would be if we were to have a Friday's lecture. So thanks for exploring the meaning with me, and we'll go from here. Send me questions, email to me if you have any questions about the notes or anything on Blackboard. Okay, have a good one.